So this is going to be our how to paint noise marines video. I've been sort of mulling this over for the last few days, trying to figure out exactly what color scheme I wanted to use for these noise marines. So I've got a squadron of Havocs because, of course, with Chaos Space Marines and the icon of Slaanesh, you can do the Endless Cacophony, having a squad fire twice in one round. And because that is such a powerful stratagem, I've obviously made Havocs out of it. So these guys are heavy bolters, and they're painted in your typical Emperor's Children, light pink. They've got the black arms, and then the black leg, and the pink leg, and then the backpack is all pink. And they're a very nice color. It's not ideal for what I was looking for. And I want my Noise Marines to really stand out. Now in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, there is a little bit of information on the Emperor's Children thing with a couple of paint styles that they suggest. So there's definitely a Noise Marine right here, and it's just your typical Emperor's Children, pink with a little bit of gold highlight, and then pink both legs. My Havocs are this model right here, which you've seen already, which has the black shoulder, the black leg, and the mixture of pink and black, which is nice. I would like to go a bit more purple, but I think I've come up with an idea of what I like, and hopefully you will like it as well. I think to get the purple color I'd like to use, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a base of Nagaroth Night. So that's a really, really deep purple. So we've got a little bit here in our wet palette. We're just going to thin that out a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start painting basically just anything I want to be purple. So I'm going to kind of go with the legs. Working my way around the little chaosy regalia that tends to line up. Each of the legs. So with a base coat of Nagaroth Night, what we ended up doing is we did both the backpack, the legs, the torso, lower half of the torso, and then we got both elbow pads on each side, and I cleaned up a little bit of the shoulder pads just on the right shoulder. So that gets us a base purple. What we want to do for Emperor's Children is we also want to do black on the chest plate, as well as both gloves. So that'll be due next, so that'll involve taking Abaddon black and just going over each of those areas. You don't have to worry too much about making a mess, because we're going to clean up the detail afterwards. But if you can avoid going over the trim and the edges, which we're going to paint gold later, that just makes it easier. As well as the back half of the chest plate leading into the backpack. So I'm getting inside the grooves here as well. We're going to leave the homemade skirts that we added on, or capes, and we're going to leave those there because we're going to leave those white afterwards, as well as the helmet. So with the layer of Abaddon black, as you can see on top of both the shirt, both gloves, we also got just this little tiny area just behind the joints of the knees. We've got our base coat of black down, and don't worry, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's neat, because we're going to clean that all up later when we do our finishing detail. Now what we're going to do is do the Noise Marine guns, the sonic blasters. We're going to do it with lead belcher. This gives us our base color of metallic. We'll also do anything else we want to color metallic, such as some of these trims and medallions and things like that. Most of the trims are going to be gold, though, because of the Emperor's Children color. So we'll take care of that right now. And once again, we're using just considerably watered down colors. And if it takes a couple of coats, that's more than okay. Once again, it's a base color, so don't be too worried about how neat it turns out, because we are going to clean it all up later with the highlights and the finishing. Details on the backpack. And that pretty much finishes the silver on the Noise Marine. What we're doing here now, we'll probably do the same to the other 11, and then we'll meet back here again. After our layer of lead belcher, what we're going to do is go back to doing the rest of the body and the torso. And what we're going to do is do a wash of Druchii Violet. That'll do a couple of things. It'll help seal up and clean any missed spots. As well, it'll get any of these spaces, like inside of the shoulder pads, and hide all of the little spots that don't normally get colored when we're doing this, but it'll give it some background and some blending there. After that, we'll probably do a Newland oil coat as well. And that'll be a shade that we'll put over the Noise Marines guns themselves, the Sonic Blasters and Blastmasters, and that'll just make the detail in those pop. So when we're doing the shades, what I usually do is I'll usually mix them 1-to-1 with water, and I'll put them in a separate little pot, so it's easier to sort of get out of it. And you see how runny that is? That's sort of my ideal. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take that pot with just a little bit of the shade and just start filling in all of these crevices to add some color and texture down there to sort of these areas, as well as try to highlight most of the backpack, cleaning up some of those edges there. We'll come back with more color afterwards and fill in all the details, but for now we're just trying to blend in areas we couldn't reach with a little bit more pigment there. All right, so now that we have our Newland oil wash done, you can see that the details on the guns have really popped, and we did a wash of Druchii Violet on all the purple, and we got a little messy, which we did, but that's fine. And we've gone and sealed up most of the model and cleaned up a little bit on the inside where the shoulder pads were. So now what we're going to do is a very, very thin layer of Xerxes purple, and that's just to bring a little bit of color back into the highlight on the legs and clean up any of the mess we made. And we just want a nice thin layer that's going to dissolve down, clean up any mess we've made. And this one we're actually going to be very careful with, because this is a final layer for us. So there's our Noise Marine with a really, really rich purple and a black torso plate, which we will lighten with some Eshin Gray, which we'll probably do next. Alright, so after our two shade layers of Newland oil and Druchii Violet, all we're going to do is a very quick dry brush of Eshin Gray over all the black, just to clean up any spots that were missed and highlight anything that we wanted to highlight. Mostly the black is just the two sets of gloves, as well as just the chest piece. And that's pretty much it there. After that, we're going to get our fine detail brush, and we're going to start cleaning up the model very nicely. And what we're going to do is start with the brass. So then after the Russian gray, all we're going to do is start with a fine detail brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to start covering over the gold trim. And we're going to start with the base of Balthasar gold. And this is the layers where we have to be careful because we don't want to disrupt the layer of purple and the layer of black that we've already done, that we got some fine detail coming. We're going to do both chest pieces, the breather unit, the shoulder pads, the end of the guns, as well as all the trim around the armor and the 2 speakers that we mounted on the backpacks as well. With our Balthasar gold finished, the Marine is really looking to come together pretty nicely. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of palette witch flesh and we're going to go over all of the helmets on each of the Marines, and that'll really clean up any messes that we've made there. With the brass, it may take 2 coats to cover some of the stain of the purple we made earlier. So it'll take a couple of coats to really get the detail, but with these lighter colors, you don't want to make it chunky. So that's what we've got there. We'll do a second coat, and we're actually going to do the rest of these guys. Now, we did have one Slaanesh head from the kit that we had used earlier. So with that one, we're actually going to use Bugman's Glow, and just on that head, and we'll probably put some Xandri dust base for this bone horn that he's got coming out there. So we're going to do all that, and then we'll meet back again. So finishing our layer of pallid witch flesh, what we're going to do is a shade of Agrax Earth Shade, which we're going to put all over both the Balthasar Gold as well as the pallid witch flesh that we just did. This will really make the gold pop. We're going to try our best to keep it on just the gold. And not onto the silver that we've already done the Newland oil on. And then the face. Pulling it all forward. Where no trouble covers the breathing apparatus. And a little bit of a wash of water at the top just to run it down. So you get more of that appearance there. And we can use that dry brush just to sop up a little bit of the extra along the breather, and we'll leave him to dry. For the champion, after he's been done with Bugman's Glow for his head, and we've done some Xandri dust up here, I've shaded that with the Agrax Earth Shade, because that's usually what you put over Xandri dust, gives it a nice bone look. But for the face itself, we're going to do just a little bit of Reekland Flesh Shade. Now, if you don't have any heads like this, then it doesn't really matter too much with this step. You can skip it. The detail on these guys really starts to stand out now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start our highlight layers. So we're probably going to use a little bit of Iron Breaker over anything of the silver that's been done here. As well, we'll probably use a little bit of Brass Scorpion over the highlights of the Balthazar's gold base. So this should bring out both of these and sort of make the whole model pop. So starting with the iron breaker, we're just going to highlight some of these fleshed in areas and make them glow right very bright. Really shine those up. And just pretty much a dry brush of that on there. Anything the light hits from the top as well. On the back side of the model we have these little bits of piping. So I'll hit that while we're at it. As well as the back half of the wires here. So once we're finished with iron breaker, what we're going to do is add a highlight of brass scorpion to all of the gold brass type areas, just like so. Anything the light would shine down on from the top, particularly the front of the gun, shoulder pads, especially this corner right here, that always tends to pick up the light. And then actually the front knee. And the top of both jetpacks, of course. And maybe just the top of that skull. You'll see that when we did the skull a second ago, we spilled over. And a touch of Eshin Gray will clean up that front plate. Just to clean up our lines. So all we're going to do now is add a little bit of Cadian flesh tone to this leader. And sort of dry brush it right across everything here, just to lighten them up a touch. Alright, so far so good. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is add some detail to some of these wires that are here. So we've got a few colors. We've got a Mephiston red and a Temple Guard blue, but in reality any blues, colors, any base colors, just things to make it come out. So I'll do that now and we'll see how it looks. So this is after we've added both the red and the blue wires. So after we've added the red and the blue for wires, what we're going to do now is we're going to add a coating of ceramite white and clean up both the shoulder pad as well as the cape that we added in building. And we're going to get this sort of appearance here. Now, I watered down the ceramite a lot with a flow aid just to make sure that it was very free flowing, and it'll take a couple of very thin coats to get the look we want here. But we want that white to really shine and pop. So once we finish with the ceramite white, what we're going to do is add a small coat of Demonette hide just to the top knot over the top of the helmet, like so. So now that we've got the top knots finished, what we're going to do is we're just going to go over the capes with a Drakenheart Nightshade, which gives us a nice little blue tinge. We've mixed it considerably with water to really, really water it down. And we're just going to put it in all the grooves. And just let it pool in the corners. And then what we'll do is we'll highlight it after with probably white scar or a different brighter color. So now that we're waiting for the shade to dry, what we're going to do is take a very fine detail brush, a little bit of Stormhost Silver, and with just the smallest of details, I'm going to color in the eye visors. Like so. A nice silver effect there. And then all we're going to do now, I'm going to take that little bit of Waystone green and our very fine detail brush again. And just pull that over the Stormhost Silver. So with our lens covers finished, we have a nice little green glow to them. We're just going to clean up the back of the coat. And we're going to do that with just a little bit of white scar, which is our white highlight that we're going to use. Now what we're going to do is go over the higher raised areas. And then all we're going to do now is use a little bit of Druchii Violet to shade in the top knot that we had did up earlier. Getting a nice rich color. Into that area there. Just like so. When it dries, we're going to dry brush it with Slaanesh Gray, and then I think they'll be ready for basing. So the models are based, and we're now doing that dry brush of Slaanesh Gray, just to highlight those top knots again. I like to start on the back side so that even if it messes up a touch, it's not in a visible area. And then bring it out forward to get the highlight on the front part there. Now we just have to put the flock on the bases, and then we'll clear coat them up for the night. And here we have our finished Noise Marines. As you can see, everyone is finished. They're all based now. And that's what they look like here. I took the opportunity to put a few transfers on the shoulder pads. Which are Emperor's Children, because Noise Marines are always Emperor's Children. So I hope this turned out very well for you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And we'll be back again with another painting tutorial at another time.